a very good evening to you from wherever you're tuned, watching Farmers Media. Thank you so much for staying tuned and keeping it locked to our Facebook channel. How are you doing? How is your afternoon? What have you had for lunch? Myself, I've had some, is it called green grams and chapati? And Waki was telling me that CG, someone needs to take, I don't know, 2 cups of, it's only recommended for someone to take 2 cups of coffee per day.
Yeah. You don't, not too much caffeine.
What happens if you overdo it?
I know it's not good for your heart because it's a stimulant. You're already overworking your heart by having it. You know the work of caffeine. It's a stimulant. A stimulant. That's why I want to talk like I'm not a medic. So what I know is not recommended.
So like, oh no,
It's like
I was confusing caffeine with nicotine.
It's not.
Nicotine is tobacco.
Yes, in tobacco.
So difference ya caffeine and tobacco ni?
One is they're both stimulants, but nicotine has adverse effects to your body.
What?
Yeah, nicotine, not.
Nicotine.
Nicotine.
So those people who smoke like a whole packet of cigarettes.
Those, and then you know what happens. Smokers' lifespan are actually lower than people non-smokers. That is why Naskia they keep telling people that even secondary smoke is enough to get you having lung cancer. So
the secondary the smoke that we usually inhale after those people who smoke.
And then it reduces, the thing is it reduces your immunity. The most important thing is your immunity. So you can imagine a smoker and then you are susceptible to diseases. Yeah, because your immunity actually is low. That's why you're seeing, they tell people to, cigarette smoking is harmful to your health. When they put that caption, you need to understand why. Yeah.
But then how come they've not put such kinds of things on the coffee?
No, coffee doesn't.
Like
no, not like it is bad. It's just an advice you're being given. Yeah, do not take too much coffee or too much energy drink like Red Bull. You see, you're limited to 2, because that stimulates. You know what? You don't. What it does is just stimulates your body. Yeah, but naturally, your body should be able to stimulate itself. So what we do is just put like kama kuweka sukari to just improve your taste.
Yeah. So at least today I've learned something new. Not more than 2 cups of coffee per day.
Strong coffee, especially black coffee. Especially black coffee.
Because I actually realize sometimes when I take coffee, I usually get a terrible headache.
Your body also gets addicted to it most of the time. That's why you see those, especially tea. Those people who take tea get serious addiction problems. That's why your body now starts reacting by causing headaches if it doesn't get it. That's when you drink, you get that, you relax. It relaxes you. Same to nicotine, cigarettes. Those people who haven't smoked, they don't even hold this. They won't even hold this. Yeah, that's addiction. Addiction is quite bad. And there are places where caffeine, some countries that caffeine are treated like addictive substances. Yeah, places where you're not even allowed to take coffee.
But why do people even sell such kinds of things? Like, watu wapendanangi ama
hatuna wakati. We can talk about that.
That was just by the way. The main topic we want to discuss is the climate carnage and the ongoing COP27 summit that is currently taking place in Egypt at Sharm el Sheikh. And yesterday we had the heads of state addressing the members, people in the summit, and more than 100 world leaders gathered at COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, to work towards implementation of existing climate agreements. The summit kicked off with an opening plenary, which we have already showed President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, which featured a range of other prominent speakers, from heads of state to climate leaders, who delivered messages on the importance of urgent action to address climate change. And also our president, the newly elected Dr. William Ruto, also got a chance to give out a speech. Have you watched did you follow the speech by President Ruto?
I followed it word by word. Yeah.
What did you?
And I realized he had a very strong opinion, or he had a strong message to send to the world. And I wanted to quote some of the words that he said. Yeah. developed nations in commitment to this climate agreement, are using delayed tactics and procrastination in delayed implementation and delivery of past resolutions. So you can imagine pledges like the pledges that were made in Copenhagen 13 years ago.
You can imagine.
13 years ago have never been committed to financially. We are talking about $100 billion per year by developed nations to developing nations. They're supposed to be putting a fund of $100 billion to combat climate change and come up with strategies of looking at climate intervention in terms of adverse climate issues. So when you look at 100 billion, if you multiply it by 13 years, that's a lot of so much money over several years. And unfortunately, countries are still doing what they do best in carbon emission. We saw that India has decided to double its coal usage in disregards to the Copenhagen Agreement, the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol. So they're like, if China cannot do it, the person who brought all these problems is Donald Trump, who was very non-committal to climate change. And during that time, the world now decided to take a blind eye towards climate change. Why should we? China is like, why is America not doing this? And we are being blamed. So what did India do? India decided to say, you know what, we have a lot of coal. And we can do it. So there's one thing that the president said, and I really want to acknowledge that. He said that despite Kenya having very minimal resources, despite Kenya not being at par with the industrialized nation, we've made full commitment in following all these climate agreements. And then Kenya, according to the president, has a lot of reserve of coal reserve, lots and lots of coal reserve. But we've decided to use green energy. 93% of Kenyan energy is green energy. 93%, despite us talking about having lots and lots of coal reserves. You know that was basically what he meant by saying that. He's just sending a threat. If we decide to sell to China or to sell to India, the way we are searching for money to pay our debts, we can sell coal.
Actually, we can just trade with China because I know we have a big debt with China.
If you tell, actually India is actually one of the biggest consumers of coal. If you tell India we have lots of coal with us, she does it to the problem we have with SGR will be minimal. Yes. So basically, there's a lot of stuff the president talked about, and it's really interesting to see the reaction of world leaders on the same.
Now, this COP27 is coming. It's, I think, the 30th session of the climate talks that have been ongoing, and just like the president mentioned in his speech, developed countries are using delayed tactics, and as much as the summit is going on and the African leaders are pushing for the developed countries to provide funding and to come up with solutions of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, how should countries get involved in this whole discussion for people to reach an agreement? Because at the end of the day, what is coming out, it's like people are playing a blame game. Oh, you are releasing more gas than us, so you need to provide more funding. But at the end of the day, it's the entire population of the world that is getting affected by the effects of climate change.
First of all, the first thing they need to do is to follow the agreement as it were from the beginning. Set aside funds and work as per your carbon emission quota that you've been given. And look at how you're going to commit in helping poorer nations. That is directly on the Paris Agreement. How do the poor countries? Let's look at. You see what the president said today. We've lost about 14 million herds of cattle.
Imagine.
Why is Africa? Ask yourself why Africa is one that's really suffering, because we do not have mitigation plans. Yeah, we do not have enough funds to help us in times of crisis. Other countries you see, like countries like the United States, they have adverse weathers like the hurricanes and the typhoons, but they have a way of mitigating, controlling, But now if you look at poorer countries, they are not well, they don't have enough resources that are going to help them fight such adverse effects of climate change. And that is why they're saying, put aside this amount of money, $100 billion. When we have funds like this, Kenya won't go and start begging Red Cross for money to help people who are suffering. You see, like here in Marsabit and Turkana, how people are really struggling. Our government is really trying to get money. So that money that was set aside could be really helping. But on the flip side, you see why the developed nations are not very non-committal to providing such funds. We saw what happened to COVID funds.
Yeah.
Why should we give these poor countries money why should we help them? You see, it's like you who's really struggled to be where you are. Now you're told to help your neighbor who's also just there doing nothing. So at the end of the day, they're like, we cannot do this.
I wanted to ask, because this is COP27. Last year there was COP26, and there have been other summits like this in the last almost 28 years ago. You mean to tell me no funds have been released ever since these talks began?
We really need to thank God that Joe Biden became the president of the United States, and one of his key agenda was climate change. Acknowledging that climate change is a problem, something that the Republicans have never wanted to accept. Now, by doing that, United States has been spearheading, has actually released a lot of funds to mitigate climate change. That one has to be said, yeah. But now that push me, pull you kind of situation where big countries like China don't want to commit. Instead, China wants to fund for industrialization in Africa, like the China Belt movement, which involves a lot of construction. And it beats no logic when we destroy trees for the sake of industrialization, you see. And that is more reasons why America came in strongly and started started opposing China's coming into Africa. Yeah. So it's there are countries that are committed, especially the Scandinavian nations, that are very interested in combating climate change. But there are countries like Russia and the others who do not give a damn. Yes.
Yeah, and in your opinion, because as much as we talk about climate, the effects of climate change, what exactly are these contentious issues that, especially countries in Africa, because listening through President Ruto's speech, he talked about Africa being the worst affected by the effects of greenhouse gas emissions, and yet we are the countries that produce the least amount of gas as compared to developed countries. What are these contentious issues that the leaders are focusing on, and how can even the smallholder farmer assist the African leaders to bring out these contentious issues?
But one of the resolutions was I think the Kyoto Protocol, where they started trading carbon. It's really helped Africans. Yeah, it's really helped Africans because they've really people have really sold their carbon credits. Yeah. Now that has been a direct benefit to the common African farmer. But now the adverse, I mean, when we talk about Africa being affected, we are talking about this adverse effect of climate. And Africa is actually located at the equator, directly at the equator. But now, the weather affects the whole world. We cannot just rule out Africa that, it's only us. In Asia, we have strong typhoons. In America, we have continuous. In fact, we are getting into the hurricane season. In Australia, we saw last year we had serious wildfires. So you cannot just say that it's Africa that's affected. In fact, we are not that bad. But the problem is we are affected because we do not have the capacity to help the poor who are really suffering, directly suffering because of climate change. You see, like Noah was talking about, do we give them food or we give them money? You see, that's where the issue is. You cannot give somebody who's hungry money. What will you do with that money?
Yeah, where will they get the food eventually?
Yeah.
Because the reason why they are not feeding is because there's no food at all.
Yeah, there's no food at all. So you look at that situation where you are told, get this money. So it's either between you getting the money or the food. Now, Africa has really been affected because much of the population actually in the lower bracket, poverty bracket. And we do not have capacity to generate income, you see. We are so dependent on agriculture that once agriculture is affected, the whole livelihood is the whole chain is affected. For example, let's look at agricultural chain. If let's say, for example, onions, for example, if onions we don't have onions this time, the transport sector is affected. Sales are affected. There are people who are directly benefit from the chain. The economies of scales. Everybody is affected. So remember, agriculture is the backbone of almost all African nations. And if nothing is done, if agriculture is affected, then the whole livelihood is affected. So that's why it's quite important. That's why you're seeing agriculture is directly affected by climate, and that's why Africa is getting the highest. They're getting the highest effect of climate change. Yeah.
Very interesting. And there's a conversation I had with one Dominic Wanji here, the founder and CEO of Biogas International, and I got to ask him his reactions regarding COP27, and he had a very strong message to the developed countries. I think we'll just listen in to what he said, and then you give me a reaction as well on what you think about COP27.
Stop dumping Western knowledge or Western ideas in Africa. You cannot develop a solution for Africa from a laboratory in Europe or in the States. In Africa, we have the solutions. What we don't have is the financing. There are so many innovations that will solve a lot of Africa's problems if only they could be financed. Our governments don't support local innovation. We have I don't know, someone asks you, we've had customers come here. We had one customer from a Kenyan who was working in South Africa, came here and said that they like the technology, but they'd heard that it was from South Africa and they haven't seen it in South Africa. And we said, no, actually it's from Kenya. And immediately their wallet went straight back in their pocket and they left. Kenyans don't trust Kenyans. We don't have any, Kenya innovation doesn't have any support from the Kenya government. So we need Africa to support African innovation. The solutions are right here. We need our education system to stop with the colonial education system. We're reading history books and stuff that is irrelevant to us today. We need to learn about what is relevant to Africa today. How do we get into, let's stop using farming as a punishment for the students. Go outside and dig the farm because you didn't do your homework. It's got to be looked at as a very dignified profession. We've got to stop with the chemicals, stop with the GMOs. That, I think, is the message we need to drive to our current government, not even at the COP 27 event. And also our government we need to stop importing chemicals. Some something in the region of 40 to 50% of the aggregate chemicals we have in our stores are banned in the countries where they are manufactured. How hypocritical is that? That you produce a chemical, it's banned in your own country because it's bad for the soil, bad for the water, bad for the people, but you're allowed to export it to a developing country like Africa or like Asia. I mean, it is ridiculous. If something is banned in the country of manufacture, it should be banned globally. The international world, the international trade should prevent anybody from exporting something that they will not use at home. It is criminal that they're being allowed to export stuff that they will not use at home themselves. Yeah, so we really need to focus on, we do have numerous resources that we can get ourselves out of poverty. We need political will, and we need the West to stop trying to dump technologies on us. I was at the Afro-Cities meeting. The Afro-Cities meeting was so expensive to attend that hardly any African exhibitors were there. All of the people were there, all the African delegates, all the governments sent their delegates to the meeting. I got a chance to present through a French organization. I was very, very happy that they allowed me. They were actually in Uganda, and they reached out to me and asked me if I would do a talk. I got a standing ovation when I demonstrated our recycle center in a PowerPoint presentation. Everyone else at that meeting was people from Europe, people from the States, dumping technology on Africa. Technologies that doesn't work for them there, and they think it's going to come and work for us here. It's all business. It's not about finding solutions. It's about making money out of ignorance of people. That has to stop. We need to start focusing on which solutions work, which ones can be scaled, and let's fix our own problems at home.
I need to give him a standing innovation for that, you know. That's a standing innovation for you.
What's your take on that?
No, you said everything. Gosh, and you need to be playing that almost every day. Play that every day so that people can hear. Whatever he said is worth 1,000 wisdom. He said a lot. In the few minutes he's talked, he said a lot, and these are the people we need to have. Let me just give you a clear indication of how annoying that this is. I was invited to Germany to do the project, the aquaponic project, but now these guys were doing that project in Senegal as a prototype. They're doing it as a prototype to show people that you can actually raise fish, vegetables in the middle of the desert. The middle of the desert. And we did the project, it worked out very well. I came back to Kenya. I was called by KTN News. We were having a show there. I was explaining to people that how we did a project deep in the desert of Senegal, and we are able to, right now they are producing a lot of food. They're doing they've harvested about 10,000 fish out of our project, and the greenhouse keeps on feeding. You see, like lettuce does, after every 3 weeks they harvest in the middle of the desert, where I remember we used to have dust storms, serious dust storms and serious. But right now, this is a model. Like, I think if anybody Googles to aquaponic in Senegal, it comes up from so many German websites. Now, these are Wazungus who come to do such things in Africa. And then I remember during the show, somebody called and asked, why are you going to do such projects in Senegal, in a desert, while our own country, we have Turkana, people are dying of hunger there. Tell them, we have the knowledge. Why can't the government just use our expertise? Why does white man notice our expertise, takes it to be used somewhere, Kenyan, going all the way to West Africa to do such a thing, and he leaves his own country to see his people suffer? What he said is lack of funds. If we have funds, we have big innovators. We have people who are coming up with lots and lots of innovative ideas. Where did M-Pesa knowledge come from? Here in Kenya. There's students from which university? Is it Kiba or Machakos University? Yes, Machakos University. They came up with a freezer a cooler freezer. It's called, it has a Swahili name, a freezer technology, how they can come up with charcoal and it freezes. Do you know China has taken that idea and they're using it in Chinese space station?
Wow.
Kenyan idea from Machakos University. Of how
you need to tell us that idea, exactly what it is.
I'm sure if you will look at it, we'll take a look at it. And I was looking at it in DWTV. Not even a Kenyan station can talk about that. Right? How they come up with a cooling system, and this thing is being used in Chinese space station. Wow. No, it's not even written in any of our old. And it was during the time when Kenya was in a lot of campaign. We are thinking about how we need to wait, and at the end of the day, you don't have innovative ideas that can solve the problem of food.
Yeah, so I think Dominic has hit the nail on the head, and
keep playing that every day. Every day, I'll even text him after this. I tell him, man, that you people, you have such a clip here, and you just sat on it.
We are Africans.
Yeah, no. You put it in your Facebook ads of almost 200,000 followers.
Yes.
Put that so that people can be able to listen to it, so that they resonate with what's happening.
But why is it that Africans don't like Africans themselves? Like their countries, even Egypt, they don't believe they're in Africa. South Africans.
It's like right now you do. I've seen it. You have something good. You paste it on your Facebook. Very few people will like. And then the moment you just say, "Hey, I've lost somebody," a friend of mine has had an issue. The RIPs will get there.
You can imagine.
People are just out there to condole with you, but they can never be happy with you. That is a problem. That's basically what takes us behind as Africans. We don't want to support each other because we look at each other as competition. And basically why? Because of the education system. You look at, we are together here, we look at each other as who will be number one, who will be number two. And that now it makes us become rivals. You were number one last time, I'll see. You become so bitter. Now you extend that bitterness into livelihood. Children are no longer social. They look at each other as competitive. Where does it go? It goes out in school, after university, at your workplace. You look at your colleague, you start competing, the kind of clothes you're wearing, the kind of cars. You look at your neighbor. Your neighbor buys a car, you won't sleep. You will not sleep at all because of the system the education system.
Yes.
They're telling us be number one, number two. Now you're creating. It's like a divide and rule.
Yeah.
So it's very hard now to be cooperative as Africans because we look at each other as rivals.
Or even if someone comes with a new innovation, there's someone else who is working to improve that innovation.
Yes.
So
Trust
that
me,
can...
have you ever gone even to Kitengela here? Yeah, somebody will open a butchery here. Not 1 month later, another one will open just next there. Yeah. There's a mall. Somebody doesn't even. Nairobi is even worse. You build a mall here, somebody will go and get a loan, builds another mall there, just there. So you wonder why you're competing. And that's why there's a policy. Life. There's a policy in malls these days that if you have a mall, it's only one kind of business you'll have. See, not like a phone and then another phone. No. In Kenya, you open an M-Pesa, Kesho, your neighbor will go and get money, and it's like he's waiting for you to do that.
Waiting for ideas.
Yeah,
they don't have ideas.
I wonder, this is how this man is making money. I'll start the same idea.
And then you worked smartly. Even if someone tries to copy your aquaponic system, yours ni ngumu sana.
It takes time to, and then like now staying this, it takes trial and error. It took me years to perfect something. I've seen people who've tried, like there's somebody we were working with somewhere who decided to take the project, to try to replicate the project. We went and replicated, bought about so many fish, which they all died. The system is not
What
working.
happened?
He tried to replicate. He was copying. Just trying to this is how takes pictures. He doesn't know the science. He doesn't know anything. So he rushes and builds for somebody, messes up the whole thing.
Wow.
And that is why you are seeing these people who are really in a rush to make money. You do something, it doesn't work out. you go out and start trashing, saying, these things don't work.
They're just a scam.
Yeah, they don't
I know,
work.
Moki, we need to release you because
yeah.
you're heading out into some other meeting. But this discussion, we shall continue it tomorrow morning in the breakfast show. This was just an introduction to what is going on at the COP27. And there is a lot there. We have a lot of reactions from people like Dominic. He has just started us off on this topic of climate. And we'll be taking a short breather, and we'll be back shortly with an interview that Noah Nasiali had with Cynthia Rosenway, the laureate of the World Food Prize this year. She's one of the ladies who has come up with a technology on, she draws crops on a computer and detects climatic conditions that work for those crops.
There's a app, I think it's app that I also use to see the kind of disease that a plant. You just look at it on your iPhone, you look at the plant, the leaves, it will see if it has a deficiency. It will just tell you add water.
You guys, you overthink.
You have to overthink.
You overthink.
Yes.
Like me, I try to connect one wire like this and it fails to work.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm done. So we'll be taking a short breather. Do keep watching A Farmer's Media. We'll be back shortly with Noah's interview with Cynthia. Keep watching A Farmer's.
Thank you.
Because we would like to showcase this just to the community of smallholder farmers for the work that Cynthia is doing, and yes.
Okay, I'll turn my camera off so they don't have to look at me.
Great. It's good you're going to be there, Emily.
Yes, so now I will do it this way. Let me, for the purposes of this, so I will okay, I think we will have it that way. Let me just put my questions up. We just realized we had quite a number of challenges today. The power company was doing some changes and they did not inform us on time. So we just realized we didn't have power at the time we really needed it to have. Okay, good. So probably we can start off by you just telling us, who is Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia Rosenzweig. I have a PhD in agronomy, and I am the leader of the Climate Impacts Group at NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. So I'm I would say simultaneously a space farmer with using the NASA tools of remote sensing and global climate models, but then through our our network, AgMIP, which stands for Agricultural Model Intercomparison and Improvement Project, we are right on the ground in developing countries, many countries in Africa and other continents, working together with teams in country to address the challenges of climate change.
Brilliant, brilliant. I will just ask this question, and allow me to ask this question is, why agriculture?
Oh, for me, why agriculture?
Yes.
Yes. How did I get to be right there, on the farm?
Yes.
So when I was very young, my husband and I went from the United States to live in Italy, in the country. And we had a farm there. And all the people in our farming district taught us how to be farmers. And I fell in love with agriculture way back then in Italy. And then when we came back to the United States, we had a farm in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. We raised cattle, we raised corn, we raised, or you would say maize, right? Maize. We raised pigs, we raised vegetables, cucumbers, and sold them at markets in the New York area. So I've been a farmer on the ground, really. Then I went and said, I love this. I'm going to go get my PhD in agronomy. And then I started modeling crops and climate change in the computer with what we call crop models. And now I grow all the crops in the computer with many researchers all around the world to help project what climate change means for agriculture.
Interesting. That's very, very interesting, because why I asked this question is because a lot has been happening, and one of the most challenges that we are seeing in Africa is that there's a lot of research, but the research is based on specifics, and that research doesn't go down. And the other thing is that we have not seen a lot of work being done in agriculture, and that's why we have started a campaign of how we can be able to modernize agriculture and make it attractive to young people. What has been your challenge on this journey?
Yes, well, those are very, very important and very real challenges that you just spoke about. How do we get the global scale research really right down to really help smallholder farmers? There are over, I'm very interested in your work with smallholder farmers, all worldwide, not just in Africa. There are over 500 million smallholder farm households farming less than 2 hectares for their farms. So clearly, this is absolutely a tremendous challenge for helping those farmers respond to the challenges of climate change, not just in the future, but now, because climate change is happening now. So what we do through AgMIP, our network, is we work with teams in the country, in all different countries. So in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, AgMIP has had programs in more than 20 countries. And we all work together. It's a completely horizontal network to create the tools of what are the climate change, we call them scenarios, that are projecting what climate change will bring to the farming systems there, crop modelers, livestock modelers, and very important, economic regional economists and their models who put it all together, because in the end of the day, when we test adaptation packages, those teams in the countries are called A teams, the AGMIP A teams, which stands for adaptation teams. And at the end of the day, we test, so we create with farmer groups and program managers, we create adaptation packages and then test them in our models. And what the models show is how they will affect farmer livelihoods. Will these adaptation packages in response to the changing climate, will it help farmers? What will happen to their incomes? What will happen to poverty levels? And then we then work with those groups, those stakeholders, to help implement the evidence-based solutions to the changing climate. That's what we do.
Great, great. And so now let's get to the prize, the World Food Prize. What do you think about this? First of all, again, congratulations on behalf of smallholder farmers across sub-Saharan Africa. We want to congratulate you for getting this prize. What do you feel about this?
I'm so thrilled and honored to receive the World Food Prize this year. But it's not just me, it's really all of our network, over 1,000 researchers in countries all over the world, highlighting the researchers who are working in their countries to help the countries confront the global and regional challenge of climate change. Climate change this year is coming to in agriculture, especially, agriculture is coming to the forefront of climate change. There's the next conference of the parties is going to be in Egypt this year on the African continent, and food systems and farmers are one of the major themes of the conference. So the prize this year for me is not just highlighting my work, but really highlighting the work of the researchers in AGMIP who work tirelessly to help their countries respond, as well as the climate change issue that needs to be at the table in the global negotiations on climate change.
Brilliant, yes. And I know COP27 is going to be a big thing, especially happening in Africa, seeing the effects that is happening. And right here in Kenya, we actually feeling and seeing the effects of climate change. So what pushed you, Cynthia, what pushed you to come up with a study on climate and agriculture?
Yes, so when I was a farmer, what is the number one thing that farmers experience? What we call climate, but it's what's happening with the rain, what's happening with the temperature, what's happening with droughts, what's happening with heat waves. And from my farmer background, climate is just the number one effect on livelihoods and on farming, because it's those first biophysical effects of the climate on the crops, and then, but how do those then translate in, well, did we make money on the cattle that year because we had a good corn crop, or when we went to market with our vegetables in New York City, were we making enough money, or was the heat slamming the production and the yields? So when I went to study, then I said, I got to learn more about this. So I started back studying, and I started from the very beginning. And I then learned all about the processes, the scientific processes of how the climate affects the crops. And that's what I specialized in when I went back to school. So I wanted to learn more, and that's what I did. So that's how I really got to focus on climate change and agriculture.
Interesting. One of the questions that I'm seeing here is there any findings that you'd like to share with us of some of your research?
Yes, I very much want to share. So, for example, in Ghana, so what we do with the adaptation teams is develop, as I said, these adaptation packages, and then we run them through all our linked models, and then see what happens to the incomes and poverty rates, and with under changing climate conditions. So, for example, in Ghana, we found that the climate change would decrease yields 12 to 20% of yield and increase poverty almost 10%. But that was in farming households that were focusing on maize. Then the researcher, the A team there, tested the addition of peanuts or groundnuts into the systems, and they found that groundnuts were not as vulnerable to the climate changes in the heat. And so that's an example of a result which then we can take to that team then takes to the planners to say, let's see about developing programs that would include groundnut as well as maize. That's an example. In Zimbabwe, the A team, the AgNet A team, found that adding the legume mucuna into the farming system with the mixed crop and livestock system for those farmers there helped the poorest farmers have the legume, but then they realized that there needed also to be not just growing on the farm, but there needed to be a market for the legume and for mucuna. And so they then, again, you see it's working with not only adaptation packages of what the management changes would be, but it would also be then the farming system with the different groups involved, including the planners, the markets, to all work together to create and implement the solutions.
Good, interesting. Is there a reason why we still have some slow progress in terms of adapting to climate smart agriculture from your research? Is it a government issue? Is it smallholder farmer trainings that are not being implemented in the right way, according to your research, having worked in some of the African countries?
What we have found, and in our latest work, worked in Senegal, Ghana, and Zimbabwe. And what we found was that there was here were some of the reasons that we found to answer your question. One is that there's a kind of disconnect between the national scale program planners and then the different farming regions in each country, which are very different, right? And so what we are really now working on is we're calling it INARA, Integrated National and Regional Assessments and Adaptation, really. And adaptation, because we've got to connect much better. Okay, right here in these regions, we do these kinds of integrated studies, and we say, oh yes, we need to develop a market for mucuna, let's say. But what we also simultaneously have to do is work with the national planners who are developing the programs, and then the financing for those programs, right? And so that we can link up those two scales. And that's really where we're going, because we identified this big gap between those two scales.
You mentioned something interesting about the financing bit. How easy is it to convince philanthropic organizations to support this, and how easy is it? Because we over the few years that we've been working, we've seen a bit of challenge even when it comes to fintech. How easy is this?
Yes, well, I think it's getting better. But I also work on with the United Nations Environment Program, the Adaptation Gap Report. And there's still, even though there is financing is increasing, there's still just a tremendous gap between the financing that's actually needed to respond to climate change, and that we know is needed. Now, I think coming into the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, this move towards saying this is the climate, this has to be the decade of action. The window is closing, that we have to learn how we're both reducing greenhouse gas emissions and developing climate smart agriculture, which includes both reduction of greenhouse gases and resilient farming systems. And I believe that the motivation now is growing for there to be much greater support to scale up. See, what we have to do now is we know we know and we can figure out what needs to be done. But now what we have to do is scale up in the decade of action for climate change solutions. And I believe that's the hope for COP27.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think now that it's in Africa, it is inevitable that we have to actually make sure that this is a reality. I would like to move to the next question and just ask, the effects of climate change are being felt across the world. We are seeing monsoons, we're seeing floods, even in Europe, across Africa, and the challenges are there. We've seen in India and Pakistan as well. Where do you see the state of agriculture in the coming years, let's say in the next 10 years? What needs to be done for any good progress to be made?
What many groups are saying is, and I truly believe this, that the world food system has to be transformed. And it has to be transformed to face the multiple challenges to respond to the multiple challenges that the agricultural system is facing. So we at AgMIP work primarily on climate change. So that is huge. And it affects, as you said, it affects every region, both in low and middle income countries and in the high income countries. All countries have to be working to respond to climate change. But we also have the absolute simultaneous threat really that the food system has to produce health. It has to produce healthy food and food security for all. And there has been a growing malnutrition on both sides, on both the hunger side, but also on the side that's causing obesity and leading to, in many countries now, in not only in developed countries, but also now that is starting in developing countries as well. So the transformations that are needed, and a lot of groups are calling for this food system transformation, is that the focus has to be healthy food for a healthy planet.
Sorry, yes, thank you. And that's really a very important bit, because we have talked about zero hunger for so long, but we had not mentioned the word healthy and safe in the same context. And I think as you have explained, that is one of the things that we can clearly see, that you have not only factored climate change, but you also factored the nutrition bit of it. And that brings me to the next question that is related to that one: is there hope? Will nations ever be able to combat effects of climate change?
Absolutely, yes. you can see I am a pretty optimistic person, but because I have worked in this challenging field of climate change since the 1980s, I can tell you that and also from the interacting through the World Food Prize, I have interacted with dozens of groups, and I want to learn more about the groups that you are working with and see if we can hook up with AgMIP. But you see, there's so many groups all around the world on all different sides of agriculture, like from your group with smallholders, so absolutely critical, but all the way to the biggest agribusinesses. They are really opening their eyes to these challenges as well. So I do have hope, but we must work together. Absolutely concertedly. We must collaborate more than we've ever collaborated before to scale up to address the challenges that the food system faces.
Yeah, that's really optimistic, and yes, for sure, because we work with quite a number of farmers. We have groups. In total now, the groups are close to 550,000 farmers across Sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm definitely sure that that once we hook up and be able to see how we can be able to showcase what you're doing and get even farmers to adapt to some of the technologies you're building, it would be brilliant. Now, I know that this discussion, you being in agriculture, myself in agriculture, and in the media, we can continue for long. But one of the things that I wanted to ask is, countries have marked World Food Day amidst hunger shocks due to failed rains, recovering from COVID as well. And then we also have the war across Ukraine and Russia. How can nations collaborate to alleviate hunger?
Yes, well, I'm very, very glad you brought up both COVID and conflict, because those are, again, these multiplying threats to the food system. The war in Ukraine has already been raising wheat prices, barley prices, rapeseed, sunflower oil, fertilizer prices have originally went up 40%. So these effects of conflict are very real. COVID affected supply chains, affected labor productivity, then very much had a knock-on effect to food security. And then droughts and floods of increasing extreme events due to climate change. So you can see this concatenating, as you were saying, this just concatenating set of challenges to the food system. But again, through World Food Day, and I was just in preparation for our interview, looking at the FAO website for World Food Day, and there are dozens of countries that are celebrating World Food Day, but not just celebrating it, but really using World Food Day to advance the programs that are actually needed to respond to these threats. So these, our global institutions are, such as FAO, are really working hard to bring the countries together. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that's the group that really brings the countries together to respond to climate change. Adaptation is a very, very key plank in the discussions there, and will be even more strongly embedded in the negotiations this year. So I believe that these processes, while it seems sometimes slow, but the momentum is building, that the decade of action really is starting now and really will grow and build in the coming years.
Great, and I really love the positivity and yes, and that you have, and we are sure that definitely as we work together, as we continue partnering together, we can be able to bring this a reality. Now, just a few last questions. One of the things that as we celebrate World Food Day, we're also facing the reality that we have to have improved seed varieties that are to match and help us get better yields despite the challenges in our soil health. What do you think about GMO?
Oh, that's a challenging question. That's a challenging question. The problems with GMO relate to, I believe, public and private conflicts, discord, because previously genetic improvements used to be done much more in public settings, and then they would be then really open source goods, and that's what we need, I believe. I think one of the very main issues with GMO is actually that it's privatized, and so that it's not this public good, which is what genetic material for responding to climate change needs to be. So that's I believe I really believe that's the main issue with the GMO.
Yes, absolutely, and to add on to that as well, the information is not being shared, as you've mentioned. It's not being shared openly. You know, smallholder farmers have a lot of questions. Very many myths going around. You know, in our country in Kenya, GMO has now been the ban on GMO has actually been lifted. It is a very dicey situation right now, and we are hoping that once the dissemination of this information is broken down, and it can be able, it should be clear, and whether it's a discussion to go for or against. But again, as you've said, it is a very tricky discussion now. Now,
let me just give back one very quick. Also, just say, so there was a fellow of the Columbia University Earth Institute. I'm also associated with Columbia University, and she, after finishing her postdoc fellowship, she and two young colleagues, this is early career scientists, founded an organization to exactly address all the issues that you were just saying about GMO. So I will hook you up with her too after this call, and her new organization, because this idea of education, dissemination, what are things really, you know, what are the challenges? How can we make this work? How can we make these new technologies really work? And as part of the scaling up to respond to climate change, but for the public good. So I'll hook you up with her. Young people are on this, the very challenging issue. I think.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think we might be frozen.
Yeah, shoot.
No, he's coming back.
I think he's back. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
The wrap up.
I think
yes.
Yeah, back. Yes. Yes, we're back now.
Good.
Yes, you had mentioned that there was somebody. You can just take us back to that.
Sure.
Somebody
just very quickly, one postdoc, a fellow, postdoctoral fellow at Columbia University is that I worked with, and she started an organization with other early career researchers and scientists to address exactly these issues, Noah, that you are raising about the challenges around these new technologies that are many multifaceted, but how can we really work on those so that we can really get the advances out into the world for responding to climate change.
Yeah. I'd be glad to meet, because one of the things that has been a challenge in Africa is that access to this information has not been an easy thing. I have not studied agriculture, but I've just made it my goal to be able to make sure that I can be able to help disseminate, demystify some of this basic information, that smallholder farmers need so that they can be able to improve and help us be food secure, and yeah. So what is your message on this World Food Day, considering that you are also the same week that you're receiving your award? What is your message on this World Food Day?
On this World Food Day, I want to salute all the people around the world who are working on responding to the challenges of climate change, including Noah, your fantastic work with smallholder farmers, so crucially important. As we move into this significant and urgent decade of action on climate change, food needs to be at the table.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and we're hoping to see you in Iowa. I'll be there, I think, on Thursday as well. And then probably if not at COP27, we'll also be there. I want to thank you very much for having given us your time. I know it is pressing, and I thank you very much for the dedication that you're putting and the effort and energy and resources to be able to help support smallholder farmers by your research and your findings as well. We hope that as we continue to interact, we'll be able to find more on what you're doing. We can see areas where we can collaborate together and help bring this. Emily, also, thank you very much for organizing this. I would like just Cynthia to give us one drop. Just say your name and say you're watching A Farmers Media.
I'm Dr. Cynthia Rosenzweig, and I am watching A Farmers Media.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and have a good day. We are quite in the evening here, and we want to thank you very much. I will stop recording that one.